The first time I noticed him was on a Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, my scrubs still smelling of antiseptic and despair. I was fumbling with my keys when I felt that unmistakable prickle along my spine that told me I was being watched. He stood at the edge of my front yard, just beyond the circle of light cast by my porch lamp. Tall, broad-shouldered, and completely motionless. When our eyes met, he didn't look away or pretend to be doing something else. He just stared. I hurried inside, double-checked the locks, and told myself I was overreacting. The next night, same time, he was there again. And the night after that, always at 8 p.m., always in the same spot, always staring. I started varying my schedule, coming home earlier or later, peeking through the blinds to see if he was there at other times. He wasn't only at 8 p.m., like some kind of twisted clockwork. By the fifth night, I'd started taking photos of him with my phone, documenting each appearance. I showed them to my coworker, Melissa. "Jesus, Maya, that's creepy as hell," she said, zooming in on his shadowy figure. "You need to call the cops. And tell them what? That some guy stands on public property once a day and doesn't do anything. Better safe than sorry. Remember that nurse from oncology last year? The one who didn't report a stalker until he broke into her apartment." I knew she was right, but something held me back. Maybe it was exhaustion from the long shifts, or maybe it was the fact that despite my fear, he'd never made a threatening move. He just watched. I bought pepper spray, installed a security camera, started taking Krav Maga classes on my days off. I'm not going to be a victim, I told myself in the mirror every morning. After 2 weeks, I'd had enough. I'd been running on stress and adrenaline, jumping at shadows, sleeping with a baseball bat beside my bed. That night, when I saw him through the peephole, something inside me snapped. I yanked the door open, my pepper spray clutched tightly in my left hand, finger on the trigger. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, my voice cracking with a mix of fear and rage I barely recognized. He blinked, startled by my sudden appearance, and took a half step back. Under the porch light, I could see him clearly for the first time. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair flecked with premature gray. He wore a clean but well-worn jacket, and in his hands I now noticed were carrying something was a brown paper bag. "You gave me a sandwich once," he said quietly. His voice was deep but gentle, with a slight tremor. 10 years ago, it saved my life." He swallowed hard. "Now I'm a chef, I bring you dinner." Every night, I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind racing to process his words. 10 years ago, a sandwich. And then, like a bolt of lightning, the memory hit me. I'd been in nursing school, walking home late after a brutal study session at the library. There was a man huddled in the doorway of a closed deli, thin and shivering despite the mild spring air. I'd stopped something my friends had lectured me about countless times, asked if he was okay. "Haven't eaten in 3 days, he'd mumbled. I had a sandwich in my bag, one I'd made for myself but hadn't gotten around to eating. Turkey and Swiss on whole wheat. Nothing special. I gave it to him along with my unopened bottle of water. He'd looked up at me with such naked gratitude that I'd felt embarrassed, awkward. "It's just a sandwich," I'd said. "Sometimes that's all it takes," he'd replied. I'd hurried away, the encounter fading into the background noise of a busy life. I'd forgotten all about it until this moment. I struggled to find words. "That was you." In the doorway of Sal's deli. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "Daniel," he said. "My name is Daniel Reyes." The paper bag in his hands gave off a warm, savory aroma that made my stomach growl involuntarily. We both heard it, and something in the tension between us shifted. "It's coq au vin," he said, holding the bag toward me, with fresh sourdough and roasted asparagus. I looked at the bag, then back at his face, searching for any sign of deception or danger. All I saw was sincerity and a vulnerability that mirrored my own. "I've been leaving the food on your doorstep for the past few nights. After you go back inside," he continued. "I didn't want to scare you, I just wanted to repay you." I realized with a start that I had been finding anonymous paper bags on my porch in the mornings. I'd assumed they were missed deliveries from a local food service and had been throwing them away untouched. "You've been cooking for me every night," he nodded again. "I wanted you to know that small kindnesses matter, that they can change everything." My hand holding the pepper spray lowered slowly to my side. The spring night air felt suddenly cooler against my skin, or maybe it was the adrenaline finally draining away. "Would you like to come in?" I found myself asking, surprising us both. "And explain to me why you thought standing outside my house staring at me was a better approach than, knocking on the door." For the first time, Daniel smiled, a flash of white teeth against his olive skin. "I think I owe you that explanation at the very least." I stepped aside to let him enter, my nurse's instincts running a quick assessment. Healthy gait, clear eyes, steady hands. No signs of intoxication or illness. Just a man with a debt he felt compelled to repay in the strangest way imaginable. As he passed me, the aroma from the bag hit me again. Rich and complex. My empty stomach reminded me that I couldn't remember when I'd last eaten a proper meal. "Fair warning," I said as I closed the door behind us. keeping my pepper spray within reach. If you're planning to murder me, my friend Melissa has all your photos and knows you're here. Daniel placed the food bag on my kitchen counter with careful movements, as if trying not to startle me further. The only thing I've killed lately is a bottle of very expensive red wine that went into this sauce. I watched as he unpacked the meal, not just any meal, but a work of art. The chicken glistened in a rich, dark sauce studded with pearl onions and mushrooms. The bread was still warm, steam escaping as he sliced it. The asparagus spears were a vibrant green, drizzled with what looked like a balsamic reduction. "You made this?" I asked, unable to keep the OE from my voice. "I did. I'm the sous chef at Laurel now." He named one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Started as a dishwasher 5 years ago, worked my way up, and before that I asked, the question hanging between us. Daniel's hand stilled for a moment. Before that, I was dying. One meal at a time, he looked up at me in my eyes, until someone showed me that I mattered, that I was worth a sandwich. The coq au vin was the best thing I'd ever tasted. We sat at my small kitchen table, the awkwardness between us gradually dissolving as I devoured the meal and he watched with quiet satisfaction. "So," I said, finally setting down my fork, "are you going to tell me why you decided to lurk outside my house instead of just knocking on the door like a normal person?" Daniel's face flushed slightly. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that made him seem suddenly younger, more vulnerable. "I tried to find you for years," he began. "All I knew was your first name, Maya, and that you were in nursing school. I didn't know which one. When I finally tracked you down through social media, there aren't many Maya Hendersons who are nurses in this city. I was so nervous. I'd built this moment up in my head for so long." He paused, his eyes dropping to the table. "The first night I just came to see if it was really you. I was going to knock, but then I saw you through the window, and you looked so tired. I thought, I'll come back tomorrow when she looks less exhausted. But you always looked exhausted." "Welcome to nursing," I said dryly. "So I started bringing food instead. I'd wait until you were inside, leave it on the porch and go. But I wanted to see your reaction, to know if you liked it. So I kept coming back, hoping to catch a glimpse of you enjoying something I'd made." I stared at him, simultaneously touching and deeply unsettling. I know. Social skills weren't exactly my strong suit after years on the street. I've gotten better, but Daniel took a deep breath. "The truth is, I was scared. Scared you wouldn't remember me. Scared you'd think I was pathetic. Scared you'd shut the door in my face." His voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "Or worse, that you'd be kind again, and I'd feel like I could never repay that debt." Something in his words struck a chord within me. How many patients had I treated who couldn't look me in the eye, who seemed ashamed of needing help? How many times had I said, "It's my job," when they thanked me, minimizing their gratitude because it made me uncomfortable? "You don't owe me anything," I said quietly. "It was just a sandwich." Daniel shook his head firmly. "It wasn't just a sandwich, Maya. It was dignity when I had none left. It was someone seeing me as a human being when the rest of the world had decided I was invisible." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper, carefully flattening it on the table between us. It was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with a 6 months after you gave me that sandwich, I got into a rehabilitation program. A year after that, I was working as a dishwasher at a diner. 3 years later, I got my first line cook position." His finger traced the headline of the article, "From Homeless to Hope. Local Chef's Journey to Culinary Success." I leaned forward to read the small print. The article was from a local paper, dated 2 years ago. It told the story of a homeless man who had turned his life around and was now working as a chef at one of the city's top restaurants. There was a photo of Daniel, looking much as he did now, standing proudly in a professional kitchen. When they interviewed me for this piece, they asked what the turning point was. Daniel said, "I told them about a nursing student who gave me a sandwich when I was at my lowest, how that one act of kindness made me feel human again." I felt tears welling up in my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I had no idea, but I never forgotten when I finally found you. He gestured helplessly. "I didn't know how to approach you. What do you say to someone who changed your life without even realizing it?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was Melissa Yella. "Did you call the cops on creepy staring guy?" I looked up from the phone to find Daniel watching me, his expression guarded. "Your friend checking to make sure I haven't murdered you?" he asked, with a hint of gallows humor. "Something like that," I admitted, quickly typing back. "I'm fine, long story, tell you tomorrow." I set the phone down, studying the man across from me. Just a human being with a complicated story, trying to express gratitude in the only way he knew how. "I have a shift tomorrow," I said. 12 hours on my feet dealing with other people's worst days. Daniel nodded, clearly expecting to be asked to leave. "If you're serious about this dinner thing," I continued, surprising myself, "I could use a good meal when I get home. Something with protein. Maybe not left on my doorstep this time." The smile that spread across his face transformed him completely. "I happen to make an incredible ossa buco with saffron risotto. I don't know what that is, but it sounds fancy. It's comfort food dressed up at its Sunday best," he said, just like the best of us. A comfortable silence settled between us, the kind usually reserved for old friends. not strangers with a bizarre connection. I realized with the start that for the first time in months, I felt truly relaxed in my own home. "Can I ask you something?" I said, finally. "Anything. What would you have done if I'd called the police?" Daniel's expression grew serious. I would have told him the truth, that I was trying, in my own broken way, to thank the woman who saved my life with a sandwich. And then I would have respected whatever boundaries they set. And if I'd never opened the door, he considered this for a moment, I would have kept coming, I think. Not forever, but for a while. Long enough to be sure you were getting the meals. And then I would have written you a letter explaining everything. He paused. "My therapist says I have issues with closure." I laughed, a real laugh that felt foreign in my throat after weeks of tension. "Do you think?" Daniel laughed too, the sound warm and genuine, working on it one meal at a time. As he helped me clear the dishes, our hands brushed briefly, and I felt none of the fear that had consumed me for the past 2 weeks. Instead, there was something else, a recognition of shared humanity, of lives intersecting in meaningful ways. 8 p.m. tomorrow, I asked as I walked him to the door. Daniel nodded. "I'll knock this time," he promised. "No more staring. I'd appreciate that." My neighbors were starting to talk. As he stepped out into the night, he turned back. In culinary school they taught us that food is more than sustenance. It's connection. It's care made tangible. In nursing school, they taught us that sometimes the smallest interventions make the biggest difference. I replied, "We're not so different." Then I watched him walk away, no longer a threatening shadow, but a person with a story, a journey that had somehow become intertwined with my own. When I closed the door, I realized the baseball bat was still leaning against the wall where I'd left it. I put it back in the closet, knowing I wouldn't need it tomorrow night at 8 p.m. when a chef named Daniel Reyes would knock on my door, carrying not just dinner, but a reminder that in a world often cruel and indifferent, acts of kindness ripple outward in ways we can never fully comprehend. The debt he thought he owed me had already been repaid 1,000 times over in that single moment of recognition that what we offer to others, we ultimately offer to ourselves. That sometimes we save each other, one sandwich, one meal, one human connection at a time. For 3 weeks, Daniel arrived at my door at exactly 8 p.m. each night with a different culinary masterpiece. Braised short ribs with garlic mashed potatoes, pan-seared scallops with lemon beurre blanc, handmade gnocchi and brown butter sage sauce. Each meal was a revelation, not just because of the food itself, but because of the stories that accompanied them. Daniel had a way of talking about ingredients like they were old friends, each with their own personality and history. I learned to listen for the subtle shift in his voice when he spoke about techniques he demastered during his recovery. The pride mixed with something like disbelief that this was his life now. "You're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you?" I asked him one night over tiramisu, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Daniel looked up, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a rueful smile. "Every damn day," he admitted. "My sponsor says that's normal, that it takes longer to rebuild trust with yourself than with others." I understood that feeling all too well. In the ER, I'd seen too many people at their lowest points, making promises they couldn't keep, including myself, once upon a time, with an ex who'd convinced me that his anger was just passion, that his jealousy was just love. "My coworkers want to meet you," I said, changing the subject. "Melissa has been interrogating me daily about the chef stalker." Daniel winced. "That's going to be my nickname forever, isn't it? Only until I come up with something worse." I teased, and was rewarded with his laugh. The evenings had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. He would arrive with food, we would eat together, and then he would leave by 10 p.m. so I could get enough sleep before my early shifts. It was friendship with clearly defined boundaries, which suited us both. Until the night everything changed. I'd had the shift from hell, a multi-car pileup on the interstate, followed by a toddler with a febrile seizure, and ending with having to tell a 19-year-old college student that her stomach pain was actually stage 4 ovarian cancer. By the time I got home, I was running on emotional fumes. Daniel took one look at my face when I opened the door and set the food aside. "That bad?" he asked simply. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. To my surprise, he opened his arms, offering a hug without pressure or expectation. I hesitated only a moment before stepping into his embrace. He smelled like rosemary and citrus, his chef's coat slightly rough against my cheek. His arms were strong around me, holding me together when I felt like I might shatter into a million pieces. "I lost a patient today," I finally whispered against his shoulder. "A little girl. She was only 4. Daniel didn't offer platitudes or empty he just held me tighter, one hand moving in slow, comforting circles on my back. "Her mother kept screaming," I continued, the words pouring out now, over and over. "Fix her." But we couldn't. We tried everything. I tried everything. "I know you did," he murmured into my hair. I know. When the tears finally came, they were violent, ugly things, ripping from my throat with the force of a primal scream. I cried for the little girl, for her mother, for all the patients I couldn't save, and for the parts of myself that died with each of them. Daniel guided me to the couch, never letting go, his solid presence an anchor in the storm of my grief. When the sobs finally subsided, Leaving me hollow and drained, he got up without a word and returned with a warm, damp cloth. Gently wiped my face, his touch so tender it threatened to break me all over again. "I'm sorry," I said, embarrassed by my breakdown. "This isn't what you signed up for when you decided to bring me dinner." "Maya," he said, his voice serious, "when you gave me that sandwich 10 years ago, you didn't just see me as a hungry person. You saw me as a human being having a really bad day. Let me do the same for you." Something shifted between us in that moment. A boundary crossed, not with passion but with compassion. When he heated up the food, he brought a simple but perfect chicken soup with homemade bread and brought it to me on the couch. It felt like more than a meal. It felt like care in its purest form. We ate in companionable silence, my head occasionally dropping to rest on his shoulder when exhaustion overtook me. When I finally fell asleep against him, he covered me with a throw blanket and let himself out, leaving a note that said simply, "Call me when you wake up no matter what time." I didn't call. Instead, I texted my supervisor for a mental health day, something I'd never done in 5 years of nursing, and showed up at Laurel at 11:30 a.m., just before their lunch service. The Mother D looked skeptical when I asked for Daniel, probably because I was still wearing yesterday's scrubs and looked like I'd been hit by a truck. "It's important," I insisted. When Daniel emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, his face registered shock, then immediate concern. "Maya, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I walked straight up to him, aware of the curious stares from the kitchen staff gathering behind him. "No one has ever taken care of me like that," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "No one has ever just let me break without trying to fix me or tell me to be strong or make it about them." Daniel's expression softened. "Maya, I don't want dinner at 8 p.m. anymore," I continued, cutting him off. "I want breakfast at 7 a.m. I want lunch breaks whenever our schedules align. I want midnight snacks and grocery shopping and arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes." The kitchen staff had gone utterly silent. Daniel stood frozen, the towel clutched in his hands. "I'm not good at this," I admitted, suddenly self-conscious. "Relationships, opening up, letting people in, but I think we could be good together. If you want that to..." For a terrible moment, Daniel didn't respond. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached out and took my hand in his. "Since that night 10 years ago," he said quietly, "everything I've done has been leading me back to you. I just didn't know it until now." Someone in the kitchen wolf whistled, breaking the tension. Daniel shot them a look, but there was no heat in it. "I get off at 9 tonight," he said, turning back to me. "But I can have Antonio cover the last hour if..." "9 is perfect," I interrupted. "I'll bring dinner for a change." His eyebrows shot up. "You cook?" "God, no. But I know this fantastic pizza place that delivers." Daniel laughed, the sound rich and full. "Pizza sounds perfect," he said, then leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I'm still making breakfast." As I left the restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in years. The grief from yesterday's loss had disappeared. It never would, but it no longer felt like I had to carry it alone. That night, when Daniel knocked on my door at exactly 9:15 p.m., it wasn't as a chef repaying a debt, or as a friend offering comfort. It was simply as a man coming home to the beginning of something real, something honest. Something that had started with a simple sandwich and the recognition of, sometimes in our darkest moments, all we really need is for someone to see us, truly see us, and offer what they can. Sometimes, that's all it takes.